Tim and Carol Wilson lost their 15-year-old daughter, Kimberly, just last week. They're here because they want to prevent more deaths. And Dr. Thomas Andrew is a pediatrician and medical examiner who has studied kids who try this deadly game. Good morning to all of you.
Good morning.
Tim and Carol, first of all,
good morning.
Our deepest condolences, and I have to commend you for being so brave to come on national television and talk about this tragedy in an effort to help other kids and other parents. Kimberly was a very well-adjusted, well-rounded girl, wasn't she? What can you tell us about your daughter, Carol?
She was very happy. She was full of life. She wanted to do so many things. She just had plans all the time.
So she wasn't a problem teenager, was she?
No.
Not at all.
You all have 4 girls.
Yes.
She was your 3rd daughter?
Right.
Yes.
How are your other daughters dealing with this? It must be just so devastating for them.
Well, that's the appropriate word, I suppose, devastating, where a family is recovering from something that is extremely tragic. No family should ever have to go through what we've gone through in the last week.
Did you have any idea, after hearing Michael Oku's piece, obviously this is not an isolated incident.
Right.
This seems to be a phenomenon, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But did you have any idea that she was doing this?
We hadn't ever even heard of it until the police came and talked to us about it the day after her death.
And what have you learned since Kimberly's death about this practice?
I work with children and young people. I'm a teacher. And we talk to them, and many children and young people knew about it, and just as many adults didn't know about it. The teachers, the counselors, the parents had no idea this is going on.
Dr. Thomas Andrew, how widespread is this practice or phenomenon? It must be difficult to really keep track of how many deaths or serious injuries are caused by this, isn't it?
I think it's extraordinarily difficult to try and track this because a lot of cases are handled and treated as run-of-the-mill suicides, and the right questions sometimes are not asked. It's my suspicion that some deaths are misclassified as suicides when they are really accidental deaths due to this game. So hard statistics are difficult to come by.
But this isn't really a new phenomenon. Kids, I understand, between the ages of 9 and 14, or I guess adolescents, have been engaging in this kind of activity for some time. Is that right?
For generations, really. But the difference is, in the past, children involved in this kind of activity would put pressure on each other's chests or neck, and when the child would pass out, they would simply revive in that oxygen was not cut off. But if a child is playing this game alone, using a ligature like a dog leash, a bungee cord, or what have you, and the child loses consciousness and there's no one around to release the pressure on the neck, the results will be fatal.
And why are these kids doing it, Doctor? I mean, it's a way to sort of get high without drugs? Is that primarily the reason?
Well, indeed. You're talking about a younger group of kids than is typically associated with youth suicide. These are children that are really pre-adolescents, 9 to 13 or 14 or so. They generally don't have access or as easy access to drugs or alcohol. But more importantly, these are sort of hard-driving, action-oriented kids that otherwise would shun alcohol and tobacco and those sorts of things. But the human condition being what it is, they're seeking some sort of altered state, and this is a drug-free high, if you will. And the deceit that these children fall to is that it's safe.
And clearly, I'm sure peer pressure is involved in this. It's usually probably in a party situation, although, as we saw, kids are doing this by themselves. I remember when I was in junior high, kids did this sometimes at parties where they'd squeeze a rib cage or something and pass out. But this practice, we see kids are doing it alone. That seems strange, doesn't it?
Exactly. They are exposed to it probably initially as a group, but the sensation being what it is, they seek to repeat that sensation alone. The introduction of chat rooms and websites regarding this behavior, though, I think has spread it a lot faster than the word of mouth would have in the past.
Well, you know, it's so difficult. It's heartbreaking because Tim and Carol had just absolutely no idea, and so many other parents don't, as they mentioned, that their kids are doing this. And so what can parents do? First of all, I'm assuming talking to their kids about this is critically important, right?
Well, indeed, and you can certainly incorporate this into any talk that you're already having with your child about drugs. I think parents are tuned in to speaking with their young pre-adolescent children about drugs and alcohol, and this should be an extension of that same conversation. Quite frankly, the kids know about it. It's the parents who don't.
And in fact, there's some signs, I understand. If a child complains about frequent headaches, bloodshot eyes, unusual marks on neck, if belts and ropes with unusual knots are found in bedroom and tied to furniture, obviously these are very clear signs, but this is a very secretive practice, so I'm assuming that it's pretty hard to discern if your child is engaged in it.
Exactly, but you know, to be on the lookout for it, in addition to the things that you've pointed out, certainly lots of alone time in their own rooms, which may represent a change in their behavior. And if there's a family PC, it is nothing to check the history of recent sites and chat rooms visited by that child. And certainly if there are sites there that have suspicious names,
right.
Some of them were pointed out in the early part of the story, but there are others, GASP, the American Dream Game, other kinds of names that are given to this game. If those sites have been visited, clearly that warrants a serious discussion with the child.
And Tim and Carol, I know that 500 people in your community attended Kimberly's funeral on Monday.
Yes.
And what would you say to kids and to parents who may be watching this and who are obviously very upset about what happened to your daughter?
I just would encourage parents. They love their kids and they want the best for them, and they want a future for their kids. And to just ask them, have you been around it? Have you seen it? Have you done it? Are you doing it? Just in love, because we all want our kids to be around for a long time.
Yeah, and I think, too, that, you know, there's so much emphasis on parents talking to children, and sometimes the children need to initiate some things, too. And children need to talk to their parents, too.
And maybe even schools could get involved.
Yes.
If this is a
Yes.
very serious problem, and education would be helpful as
Absolutely.
well. Well, Carol and Tim Wilson, again, I'm so sorry for your loss. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And thanks so much for coming on and talking about this, because I think you've done a real public service in your efforts. And Dr. Thomas Andrew, thanks so much for your insight this morning.
Happy to help.